From day one of Russia's ruthless invasion, Canada made its stance clear. Ukraine's fight is Canada's fight. No hesitation, no second guessing, just unwavering support. With billions poured into aid, weapons, and sanctions, Canada has kept on hitting Russia where it hurts, just blow after blow, hammering the Kremlin's war machine, hoping to push it out of Ukraine once and for all. But this latest set of moves, they might be Ottawa's most devastating yet. Here's how Canada is making sure Russia regrets every step it takes in Ukraine. Since February 2022, Canada has gone all in. Over 4.5 billion Canadian dollars in military aid alone, that's roughly 3.1 billion US dollars. That money has fueled a steady stream of weapons, ammunition, and cutting-edge military tech straight into Ukrainian hands. And it's not just a one-time deal. This funding is locked in until 2029, ensuring Ukraine has the firepower to keep fighting. But Canada isn't just writing checks. The Royal Canadian Air Force has also transported an incredible £19 million of military aid, both from Canada and its allies, straight to Ukraine's front lines since March 2022. Simply put, Canada is making sure every piece of support reaches those who need it most. This level of commitment shouldn't be surprising, since Canada's support for Ukraine didn't start in 2022. Canada and Ukraine share deep ties both historically and politically. Long before the full-scale invasion, Canada was already deeply involved. Since 2014, it has poured over $80.1 billion into stabilizing Ukraine through the Peace and Stabilization Operations Program. That money has gone toward removing deadly landmines, strengthening Ukraine's defense institutions, and countering Russian propaganda. And it's not just military aid. Canada has helped reform Ukraine's police force too. Through the International Police Peacekeeping Program, Canadian officers have worked alongside Ukrainian police since 2015, training them in community policing, investigating gender-based violence, and improving accountability. Even after the war started, they continued training missions inside Ukraine, teaching crucial skills like tactical first aid and use of force procedures. And the Ukrainian police weren't the only ones getting trained. Through Operation Unifier, Canadian troops have trained over 41,000 Ukrainian soldiers since 2015. That training includes everything from battlefield tactics to bomb disposal, real life-saving skills. And Canada isn't pulling out anytime soon. This mission has been extended until at least 2026, keeping more than 300 Canadian Armed Forces members on the ground, sharpening Ukraine's forces for the long haul. As you can see, Canada has stood by Ukraine's sovereignty for years, helping it build the strength to resist Russian aggression. So when the missiles started flying, there was never a question of whether Canada would step up. It did, in ways Russia never saw coming. Still, the second half of 2024 changed everything. If Canada's support was strong before, it became downright relentless. It started gradually, with Canadian-made Armored Combat Support Vehicles (ACSVs). In June 2024, the first 4 of 50 brand-new ACSVs rolled out of London, Ontario, en route to Europe. Canada had already donated 39 of these before, but this was just the beginning of a much bigger push. These new 50 vehicles, part of a massive $453 million investment announced by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, would all be in Ukrainian hands soon, providing troops with mobility, protection, and life-saving evacuation capabilities. These state-of-the-art vehicles are built tough. They transport soldiers safely across dangerous terrain, serving as mobile command centers and even function as armored ambulances. The fully equipped ambulance variants are designed to evacuate and treat wounded troops straight from the battlefield. By the fall of 2024, Ukraine's forces had 10 of these in action, and the impact? Immediate. These ACSVs weren't just protecting troops, they were outright saving them under relentless Russian shelling. The ambulance models meant wounded soldiers no longer had to rely on makeshift evacuations under fire, and Canada was proud to protect Ukraine's brave military personnel, as Canada's Defense Minister Bill Blair called them. The ACSVs showed that Canada's support wasn't just about firepower, it was about giving Ukraine the tools to endure, outmaneuver, and outlast Russia's invasion. But this was only the first blow. Canada wasn't finished, not even close. After all, Blair made it clear, Ukraine must win this war, and Ukraine can count on Canada's support until its victory. This strong commitment was reaffirmed in July 2024, when at the NATO summit in Washington, Trudeau, alongside other NATO allies and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, made another monumental announcement: an additional $500 million in military assistance to support Ukraine's continued defense against Russian aggression. This pledge, part of NATO's broader commitment of $41 billion by 2025, signified the deepening commitment to Ukraine's long-term strategy. This contribution brought Canada's total military assistance for 2024-25 to over $1.1 billion. This includes essential resources for female soldiers in Ukraine, with uniforms, body armor, and boots designed specifically for their needs. The next Canadian blow came in September 2024, a few of them actually. Let's start with the commitments. Canada pledged 970 C6 general-purpose machine guns straight from its military stockpile. These aren't just any firearms, they're battlefield staples, capable of laying down suppressive fire, defending positions, and giving Ukrainian forces the firepower they need to push back Russian advances. But Canada didn't stop there. It also committed 10,500 9mm pistols, ensuring that Ukraine's soldiers, police, and security forces had reliable sidearms for close-quarters combat. Every weapon counts in this war, and with thousands of fresh firearms in Ukrainian hands, Canada was making sure its allies stayed armed and ready. The country also knew that firepower alone wouldn't be enough. Ukraine needed protection and mobility too. That's why Canada stepped up with another critical donation: armored personnel carriers. Canada pledged to donate 29 M113 armored personnel carrier chassis and 64 Coyote reconnaissance vehicle chassis to Ukraine. These machines had previously served in the Canadian Armed Forces. Instead of letting them collect dust, Canada repurposed them for Ukraine's war effort, giving them a new mission on the front lines. The M113s, originally designed for troop transport, would help Ukrainian soldiers move safely across the battlefield, shielding them from enemy fire. The Coyote chassis, known for their advanced surveillance capabilities, would strengthen Ukraine's ability to track Russian movements and gather critical intelligence. Every single one of these 93 armored vehicles would play a role, whether in combat, transport, or spare parts, to keep Ukraine's existing fleet running. This donation was a response to a direct request from Ukraine, proving once again that Canada wasn't just sending any aid. It was listening, adapting, and delivering exactly what Ukraine needs to fight and win. This was the only way to support a country whose destiny will help determine the trajectory of global security, as Blair put it. And with these armored vehicles on their way, that support has never been clearer. But Canada wasn't just reinforcing Ukraine's defenses, it was arming its offense. Because in a war like this, armor can only get you so far. To truly strike back, Ukraine needed firepower. Big firepower. And Canada was more than ready to deliver. Enter the CRV-7 rockets. By September 2024, the first 2,160 CRV-7 rocket motors arrived in Ukraine after being pledged in June. The announcement came at the 23rd Ukraine Defense Contact Group (UDCG) meeting in Brussels, where Blair stood alongside representatives from more than 50 allied nations. Ukraine's fight against Russia's illegal and unprovoked invasion is also a fight for democracy, freedom, and human rights, Blair declared at this meeting. This time, Canada was supporting this fight with rockets that once armed the Royal Canadian Air Force CF-18 fighter jets. The CRV-7s had been tested for viability by Magellan Aerospace and Defense Research and Development Canada before being cleared for shipment. While Ukraine, facing dire circumstances, was willing to take the risk, having experience handling outdated munitions, Canada couldn't afford to take any chances. The CRV-7s had been in storage for decades, and there were concerns about their stability, posing potential dangers during transport and handling. To mitigate these risks, Canada ensured rigorous testing before giving the green light for their transfer. But what exactly did Ukraine receive in this transfer? The CRV-7, or Canadian Rocket Vehicle 7, is a 70mm air-to-surface rocket system. It's one of the fastest, longest-range unguided rockets in its class. It was originally designed to punch through Soviet armor during the Cold War. Compared to other similar rockets like the American Hydra 70, the CRV-7 hits harder, flies farther, and penetrates deeper. These rockets can be fired from helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft, and they can even be adapted for ground-based launches. Once Ukrainian forces integrate them into their arsenal, they'll be able to take out enemy bunkers, armored vehicles, and even air defenses. But there was one problem with this shipment. These CRV-7s were unarmed. The rocket motors had arrived, but they lacked warheads. Well, at least for now, Canada was still setting the stage for the big blow. That's why Blair made a major announcement at the 24th UDCG meeting at the Ramstein Air Base, Germany. The announcement? Canada would send an additional 80,840 CRV-7 rocket motors to Ukraine. That's nearly 40 times the amount delivered in June. But even more importantly, Ukraine would soon receive 1,280 warheads to arm them. Canada confirmed these warheads were being prepped for shipment to Poland, where they would be staged before final delivery. The decision to send these tens of thousands of rockets might have been influenced by Kirill Budanov, Ukraine's head of the main Directorate of Intelligence. In February 2024, Budanov pointed out that more than 83,000 of these rockets were stored at a Canadian facility in Dundurn, slated for disposal by a private contractor. With Ukraine rapidly depleting its own stockpiles, Budanov made the case that sending these to Ukraine could be a win-win, aiding Ukraine's defense efforts while saving Canadian taxpayers the cost of disposal. So the rockets had arrived, at least part of them. The warheads would soon follow, and soon the battlefield would feel the impact. But before this happened, Canada dealt another devastating blow to Russia. It sent Ukraine the US-made National Advanced Surface-to-Air Missile System, NASAMS, for the first time. Now, the NASAMS took a while to get to their destination. Canada's decision to donate this system to Ukraine dates back to January 10, 2023, when Trudeau announced that Ottawa would purchase the system for $283 million from the United States. The move came in response to Russia's mass missile and drone attacks on Ukraine's cities and infrastructure, which began in October 2022. Trudeau's government framed the donation as a high-priority effort to protect Ukraine's population centers, critical infrastructure, and military sites. However, despite the urgency of Ukraine's need, the NASAMS delivery faced repeated delays. Ottawa paid for the system in March 2023, but by January 2024, a full year after the announcement, the system had yet to arrive. Canadian media questioned the delay, with CTV News reporting on January 9, 2024 that neither the Prime Minister's office nor the Department of National Defence could confirm when it would be delivered. By late 2024, those delays were finally resolved. On November 4, 2024, Trudeau informed Zelensky that the system was en route. Zelensky confirmed that Ukraine expected to receive it by the end of the year. True to that timeline, the NASAMS system arrived in Ukraine on November 20, 2024. But why was this delivery such a devastating blow to Russia? We'll let the NASAMS capabilities speak for themselves. The NASAMS is a short to medium-range, ground-based air defense system, jointly developed by Norway's Kongsberg Defence and Aerospace and the US defense giant Raytheon Technologies. It's one of the most advanced air defense systems in the world, used to protect high-value targets such as Washington, D.C. While doing so, the NASAMS can intercept a wide range of threats, including drones, cruise missiles, and aircraft. These threats are intercepted by AMRAAM missiles, which have a range of 15 to 30 miles, providing robust defense. The system also features networked radar and sensors, allowing for rapid detection and tracking of targets. Its mobility is another key feature, as it enables Ukrainian forces to relocate quickly, making it more difficult for Russian forces to retaliate or target the system effectively. Canada's donation also included associated munitions, though the exact number of missiles was not disclosed. We only know that since February 2022, Canada has contributed over 300 air defense missiles to Ukraine from its Canadian Armed Forces inventory. However, the arrival of NASAMS in Ukraine, in particular, is a significant strategic setback for Russia. You see, since October 2022, Russian forces have relied on massive missile and drone barrages to target Ukraine's power plants, transportation hubs, and cities. The deployment of NASAMS weakens this tactic in several key ways. For starters, the system significantly boosts Ukraine's ability to protect critical infrastructure from Russian missile and drone attacks. As Zelensky emphasized, the system will serve as a strong shield for the Ukrainian cities and citizens. With a proven track record of intercepting advanced threats, NASAMS also limits Russia's ability to launch effective long-range strikes. The best part is that the system has already proven its effectiveness in Ukraine. The first US-supplied NASAMS batteries, delivered in November 2022, have successfully intercepted dozens of Russian cruise missiles. However, this new NASAMS system marked another type of victory, one over the bureaucratic hurdles of military aid deliveries. Its long-awaited arrival represents a concrete victory for Ukraine's air defense efforts. Zelensky, often vocal about Ukraine's need for more defensive assets, also expressed concern over delayed aid. However, he mainly focused on Canada's southern neighbor, noting that Ukraine had only received a fraction of the military support approved by the US Congress, a measly 10%. Luckily, Zelensky's words seem to have caught the ears of decision-makers, leading to an increase in military assistance. After a meeting with the Supreme Commander-in-Chief's staff, Zelensky shared that Ukraine is recording an increased supply of defense aid packages. A month or so after his words, this supply would see a true heavy hitter, the CRV-7 warheads we mentioned earlier. In December 2024, a batch of roughly 1,300 CRV-7 rocket warheads arrived in Ukraine, and this wasn't just any supply. It was a game-changer, directly amplifying Ukraine's offensive and defensive capabilities. Like the motors, these warheads have been decommissioned and stored in Canadian military warehouses for years. Originally used by Canada's CF-18 Hornet fighter jets in combat operations, now they were being reactivated for a critical mission in Ukraine's defense against Russia's relentless assault. Delivered aboard a C-17 Globemaster transport plane, the warheads made their journey to Poland first, before finally reaching Kyiv in December, in a move that had been kept under wraps for security reasons. With these warheads now in Ukrainian hands, they can be paired with the previously sent motors to create a potent arsenal of 70mm unguided rockets. And let us tell you, Russia isn't going to like this. After all, the CRV-7 warheads are designed to unleash devastating firepower on enemy positions. While they lack the precision of modern smart munitions, their impact power is unmatched in saturation fire. Their primary purpose is to overwhelm enemy defenses, flooding large areas with explosive power and inflicting massive damage. This makes them particularly effective in suppressing Russian artillery positions, troop concentrations, and key infrastructure, which have been frequent targets of Ukraine's counteroffensive operations. The sheer quantity of these warheads is also a significant factor. With 1,300 warheads now in Ukrainian stockpiles, combined with over 2,000 rocket motors already delivered, Ukraine now has the volume needed to respond to Russia's ongoing aggression. Whether deployed from helicopters or mobile artillery units, this combination will allow Ukraine to strike large swathes of Russian positions, disrupting logistics and defense lines. Additionally, this donation comes at a time when Ukraine's need to replenish its artillery stocks is critical. These warheads will help refill Ukrainian arsenals, especially for the so-called mini-grads. The mini-grads represent a clever, adaptive solution by Ukrainian forces to leverage existing Soviet-era systems while maximizing mobility and precision in the face of overwhelming Russian firepower. Unlike traditional Grad launchers, which are mounted on large vehicles and have limited maneuverability, the mini-Grad uses the same BM-21 Grad rocket pipes but is mounted on a pickup truck. This modification allows Ukrainian forces to deploy these rocket launchers much more quickly and flexibly across the battlefield, providing a distinct advantage in both offensive and defensive operations. The mini-Grad works by launching multiple rockets in a similar fashion to the BM-21, but its smaller size and lighter frame allow it to get much closer to enemy lines. This increased mobility is crucial for avoiding detection and counterattacks. It's also a significant upgrade in terms of the strategic advantage it provides, as it allows Ukrainian units to rapidly move in and out of positions without waiting for larger artillery systems or external support. The addition of CRV-7 warheads will only amplify the devastating power of the mini-Grad, helping Ukraine to keep up the pressure on Russian defenses and maintain momentum in its counteroffensive operations. While the CRV-7 warhead packs a significant punch for larger operations, smaller, more precise assets like firearms are just as crucial in the ongoing fight. After all, there's no such thing as too big or too small when it comes to the arsenal Ukraine is building. That's why Canada is also considering sending banned firearms to Ukraine, not for civilian use, but for the battlefield. These firearms, which have been outlawed for civilian use in Canada, are viewed as critical tools to enhance Ukraine's defense capabilities against the Russian invasion. They were outlawed in Canada on the 35th anniversary of the tragic École Polytechnique massacre, when 14 women were killed simply because they were women. The ban included over 2,000 makes and models of firearms. While the story behind the ban is horrific, no doubt, that ban has also opened the door for these military-grade firearms to be repurposed for the war effort. These weapons, which were once associated with tragedy, could now be put to use in a fight for survival and freedom. As Canada continues to ramp up its support, the question remains, will this increased military aid be enough to tip the scales in Ukraine's favor? And will other nations follow suit, offering even more assistance as the conflict drags on? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain. Canada has had enough and is sending a loud, clear message to Russia: get out of Ukraine. This message has continued to reverberate even as 2025 has rolled around. On January 9, 2025, Canada made it clear that its support wasn't waning. In a move that stunned Russia, Blair announced $306 million in military assistance to Ukraine at the 25th UDCG meeting. Looks like Blair's turning these meetings into a bit of a Ukraine money-giving spree, and Russia's not getting an invitation to this party. The new military aid package included a $139 million contribution to provide Ukraine with critical, larger-caliber ammunition, a vital asset to its artillery and defensive operations. Canada has also committed roughly $70 million to support Ukraine's domestic production of military drones. Given the major role these devices have come to play in the war, these donations make all the difference. So if Russia thought Canada was done, it's sorely mistaken. With every new delivery, Canada's role in Ukraine's defense grows, and the message to Russia remains clear: Canada is here to stay. But what's your take on these powerful new weapons being sent to Ukraine? Do you think they'll be enough to turn the tide against Russia? Let us know in the comments.